there's one thing that we know for sure, and that is change is inevitable. Now, that's kind of become a very common saying that, and sometimes when sayings are repeated endlessly, they lose their meaning. But that's the fact of it. I suppose we've all noticed change. We've all noticed the difference between when we were 5 years old and when we are older than that. And change is registered because of this faculty of time. And it's very debatable as to what time is, but our sense of time means that we can review things in the past and we can expect things in the future. Now, what unsettles the mind is if we don't accept change. Theoretically, we can understand that change is inevitable, but we always may have a sentiment which says, I wouldn't like things to change so much. Some kind of sentiment that says that things were better in the past. Every generation laments things are better in the past. And I suppose the older we get, the more the lamentation can be possible. But of course, we're overlooking some positive things. All the modern science of today is all built on the, and I'm going to use another phrase, shoulders of giants. It took a long time, it took hard struggle to establish the most fundamental principles that we take for granted now. Now, in amongst that, there may be some things which are not good for the environment. There may be some things but we don't know. And it's this lack of knowledge which often provides us with a sense of panic. And then we have to employ our rationale and ask ourselves, what would I personally do about this problem, if it's a problem at all? Naturally, for example, airplanes going through the sky, there'll be a pressure differential that naturally will create a trail. And yes, there would be gases coming from jet engines. And yes, this does seem to contribute toward maybe overall some kind of environmental impact. And I don't want to really get into that because I don't know much about it. There are many people who think they know about it, and then you realize that they've picked up information from media. And we have to use then our discernment. When we talk about spiritual practice, we're talking about two things. We're talking about discernment, and we are talking about the detachment. These are the two things that are classified as practice, but what do they mean? We have to have this discerning attitude in everything. Now, one question that a devotee had asked prior to our broadcast today, where do we draw the line? You can be compassionate to somebody, but then maybe that somebody is taking advantage of you. Maybe they see you as a soft touch. Or maybe if you draw the line with an amount of reasoning, then maybe people will start blaming you and be hostile to you. Now, a specific example wasn't given to me, but I gave an example back. Supposing you're walking through a big metropolis, it could be any city in the world, and there is somebody who is a heroin user, very clearly, and they're asking for some money. And you're pretty sure that they will use that money to buy drugs. Then, should you, out of compassion, say, yes, I'll give you money? Or should you, out of compassion, the same compassion, not give them money? And so we have to evaluate things on a moral basis as to what is good, what is not good, what is real, what is unreal. And we have to accept the inevitable, which is change. So change means we have to have a level of flexibility. We have to adapt. In the talk I gave the other night, or was it last night, I mentioned that one of the lessons in life would be the need to be adaptable, to be flexible enough, to weigh things up proportionately and give a definite, wise and well measured response to things. Now, we all have the capacity not only to adapt to change, we have the capacity to introduce change. And the first thing we need to introduce in terms of change is our own selves. We have the capacity to transform, as I mentioned so many times, discord into harmony. Only us, only humans can do it. Take all the discord which we find and learn to transform it into something good and useful. And we have to monitor the mental field and see at any time, is there anything that is classified as rajas, that is action, thoughts, words, etc., that will be primarily egocentric, even subtly so. A kind of go-getter attitude, which has my own self-interest primarily, and secondarily it may have other people's interest as well, but primarily I'm the beneficiary. Or is it this tamas? Is it laziness, not doing anything? Let us take, for example, moral action. Can we decide to do something that is morally right? Let us say, for example, a public demonstration against an obvious wrong. Should we participate in it? Well, we have to weigh these things up very carefully. One of the things we have to ask ourselves is, if I am worrying internally in a kind of justified indication mode, thinking that things are wrong and how dare they, then the next question would be, other than giving myself an aneurysm, what will I do about it? And if you say there's nothing I can do about it which will be effective, will it then go into the apathy category? Will I then say I'll give up, then I won't care? There has to be some well thought out response. What we might call the adult script, an arbitrator that decides what we will take from one area, what we will leave from another area, what is the appropriate response. Now this happens in diplomatic circles all the time. What is the appropriate response that we give? You know, in the days of ancient military warfare, still the rules are valid today. The Artha Shastra very carefully gave the rules for diplomacy, warfare. It said, think of your country as a nucleus in a series of concentric circles, and the next series, the outer circle around your country, consider to be hostile. It's not that you don't have friendly relations, but consider themselves to be potentially threatening your nation, which means that you make friends with those countries surrounding those. And so it goes on. And the wider you make your involvement in the circles, then the more the diplomacy, the more the entire, and so on and so forth. All these rules are there. It makes a lot of sense. So we have to be sure when it's appropriate to intervene, when it's appropriate not to intervene, and when it's appropriate to adjust things. And the criteria that we use is the good of all. Another criteria we use is the insight from penetrating vision that accesses this divinity in the hearts of everyone. Seeing that divinity present, actually present, as love, as presence now, and as an entity which is displayed, whose glory is displayed everywhere. Sun, moon, stars, power of digestion, plants, nature as such, animals, insects, humans. There are two ways of looking at this. One is from a critical point of view. That means you'll be a professional corrector and you will have no peace of mind. Last Judgment Day, just a fun scenario. The Lord is saying, I'm afraid we can't put you in the highest heavens. Why not? Because all your life you spent your whole mind criticizing. You spent your whole mind and energy trying to correct it. Because you felt you were a professional corrector, then I gave you many things to correct. And to your last day, you correct, and still on your deathbed, you'll not be satisfied because so many other things were there to correct. So we have to make sure that we are not influenced unduly by media in such a way that it upsets our mental stability and yet doesn't deaden our conscience. Our conscience is a precious thing. With it, we're able to discern what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is morally correct, and what is ethically correct. What's the difference? Well, we can consider morality as any thought, word, or action that gives the highest, the best, the most robust strength to all beings, including oneself, all inclusively. And there are many examples we can use, particularly when faced with a subjective moral quandary. What is ethics? The least egoistic position is the highest ethical standard. The highest value that we have contains no self-interest. With these two understandings, we are able to arbitrate and decide what is the best course of action, including what is the best thing to think. Now, when we say, I suspect this, the chances are then that we didn't investigate it properly. The chances are that our information is flawed. Now, supposing we don't do anything, supposing we don't go in for a protest march or whatever it is there something we can do? Yes, there's something all of us can do. And that is, in the moments of meditation, we can bring out our divinely dispensed attention and we can use it, and we can use it as a blessing tool. We can use our capacity for compassion and love to broaden our heart, as it were, to open up for the benefit of all beings, and to see a vision of goodness, purity, excellence. When we do that, do you think it's useless? No. We all make the mistake that we have our individual mind, and we don't. We have at best a branch office somewhere, but there is only one mind, and that is our cosmic mind. Otherwise called God, otherwise called our personal entity that creates all the rhythm through sheer love. It is a God that is omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. It is one that knows all things. It is one that is present everywhere. And it is one that is embodiment of love, from time to time, coming down as a cosmic balancing power and correcting things. You know, the Christian prayer, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That means we have to align our will. We have to take our own will, that is our own desires, our own wants, and subordinate it to that flow of divine grace, which is always on target, which is always truthful. When we are tuned to that, we know all our words, all our thoughts are to be truthful. So, this cosmic mind is the thinker. And when we mobilize our thoughts in a positive, fruitful way, that takes that, and it also, like the proverbial airplane, it then comes and spreads that. A bit like the drama, I'm sure you know, of water vapor being evaporated from the seas, collecting, being collated, and then being dispensed as rainfall. So thought is a suction. I'm never tired of saying it. Thought is a suction. And what we think is what we get. So if there is a collective effort to think in a pessimistic way, Will it create a disastrous world? It will. And are we doing it? We are. Because we are responding to media, and media themselves are putting out things which are of a pessimistic nature. No news is good news. All news is some disaster happening somewhere in some corner of the world. And because it's instant and because it's widely disseminated, we are more in touch with the events of the world than ancestors did in the past. We were completely oblivious to what was happening. And yet, you see, all of these terrible, terrible things that man does unto man, or man does unto environment, all of these have always been happening. Let us take, for example, Ireland. The whole of Ireland was full of forests. And in the west of Ireland, those forests were cut down. Actually, big clearings were made everywhere in the world when a man decided that they would enter into pastoral life, that they would sow grains and create fields and reap the agriculture and cultivate specialized modified grasses that came out as wheat and other things. And that had the effect of changing, adapting the human digestion. So our human digestion previously had been to do with, gathering and hunting. Now we are leading a pastoral life, an agricultural life, and our digestive system has to adapt and accommodate to that. We have this urge inside of us for perfection, this urge inside of us to manifest and move forward. And we adapt as we do it. So we have to adapt to change. Otherwise, we are left behind. And it's not easy. In an age of technology, people now talk about artificial intelligence and so on. And I'm not sure if I know what they mean. And yet, it's being widely used. People are writing emails using artificial intelligence. I myself have had a go at that. And so things are becoming more sophisticated. Things are being arranged in such a way that they are saving us time. We have the opportunity to be more efficient. That's on the one side. On the other side, we could have a reliance, an undue reliance on technology, and we have to use our discernment, our viveka, in every circumstance. Let us take, for example, mobile phones. Mobile phones can be a blessing. Mobile phones can be a curse. If you make yourself a slave to technology, it's not going to work for you. You're going to be working for it. But if you are a master of the technology and use it when you choose, and we all do it, but when we choose, for example, there are many times when a telephone rings. Instantaneously, the person feels impelled to pick it up and respond. And in the days of landline telephones, we never necessarily found the urge to do that. Or because there was a leave a message. All right, we still have this opportunity, but there's this impulse to be immediately responsive right now, which means the technology has become our master. So it is also planes flying and so on and so forth, all of that, We have no understanding whether any rumor is true, and if it is true, what can we do about it? In our moments of faith, which should be moment to moment, when we sit down, when we have a dialogue with the Lord Supreme, when we align and attune our thoughts to the highest, when noble thoughts come to us from all sides, what will we do? We will have a blessing attitude to everybody. So there are many, many things which we feel appalled by, and they come to us because our ears hear them from the news. Now, there's two ways of listening to the news. One is that you can take it for as information, what's going on in the world. That's how I take it. Or you can then allow your heart to sink because of all the things that you don't approve of. And then the sink becomes like a kind of pressure. And the pressure, you feel like that something is pushing you down and down and down and down, and there doesn't seem to be any other way out. In other words, it's a slavery. And our duty, our capacity is mastery of all the senses, mastery of the mind, mastery of our own psychophysical unit, registering this as our instruments. So why would we get ourselves in a state of anxiety because of hearsay or because of a reaction which has no use? If we are to have a reaction, let it have some good use. Let it be a reaction which is a blessing movement, not a cursing movement. And don't think it doesn't have an effect. Every thought condenses ultimately into the world around you. This is the key to mass prayer, for example. Masses of people all around the world deciding on a particular date and time we are going to say a prayer. The only thing is, if it's a bargaining prayer, it's not working. If it's a struggling prayer, it doesn't work. What do we mean by struggling prayer? We feel that somehow things are not right and have to be corrected. Or there is a want somewhere and it has to be fulfilled. And we have a desire fulfillment. And so our prayer is, let things be fulfilled. Until ultimately we make a realization that we're not going anywhere, we're not getting anywhere. We have to change our understanding that the divine, which is the cornerstone of our world, the foundation of our world and the substratum of it, and the only thing which is ultimately real, that entity is here, that entity is now, that entity is love. With that we proceed. And so we have an impact. Do we have examples? Yes. 2,000 years ago, there was a Jesus, and we are still talking about him, still even debating about him, still being inspired about him. There was, before that, a Buddha. We have Buddhists today, an inspiring entity, a shining light that changed the world. The museums are full of memorial figures who had their impact in terms of our memory on the world, but not for the greater good. Warmongers, warriors, people who, and sometimes people who made scientific discoveries. But what about those people who changed the world for the better, who made a dramatic impact on the world? The saints, the sages, the mystics, some we have heard of, most we have not. These are the entities who have not only mastered their own life, mastered their own minds, but also have controlled nature. Swami Vivekananda's addendum to his initial statement, each soul is potentially divine, and the goal is to manifest this divinity. Controlling, then he goes on to say, controlling nature, internal and external. Is it possible to control nature? Is it possible to control the whole of the energy in the whole universe? Swami Vivekananda unequivocally says yes. Once you have controlled prana, pranayama, once you have controlled prana locally, you have controlled it everywhere, in every part of the universe. And when we see it happening, we call it a miracle. And because it's outside our norm, we doubt it. But actually, there's only one energy, there's only one mass of matter, there's only one ethereal akasha, there's only one electromagnetic field, there's only one mind. And bearing that in mind, we then proceed with fruitful thoughts, thoughts which will have an impact everywhere. And these come as words, positive words, strong and true and wise and full and free. You're familiar by now with the list of words that I put out. Goodness, love, harmony, peace. All of these we put out. And as soon as we repeat them as manifested words, then we resonate with these qualities. And if we resonate with these qualities, our magnetic field changes. And if our magnetic field changes, the magnetic field of everything changes. That's the impact that a saint and mystic has. So we should rather use that, not with a wish to change anything, but a wish to express the glory which is already here, that we didn't notice because we only saw the dark places. We only saw the negatives, the minuses. We never saw any pluses. So, in terms of change, then, we accept change as an inevitable thing, and we are confident that within us we have the capacity to adapt. And once we adapt, we can now pull on unlimited resources in ourselves, because actually we can do all things. I always remember when I was back in Zimbabwe, and I was involved in science projects also, and it happened that I met somebody in Johannesburg. It was actually a doctor, not a medical doctor, a doctor in biochemistry, and his wife had so many doctorates as well. And she was in her 70s, maybe even early 80s, if I recall correctly. And she was busy taking another doctorate in I forget what subject it was, completely different subject. In other words, she'd picked up an interest in life and found life interesting. And that led me to give advice to others. Do take up some new interest every day. Learn something new every day that you had never any clue about. And is it easy today? Yes, very easy. What used to take us a long, arduous time, going to a library, traveling to the library, doing research, and picking up a reference book and getting a morsel of information and writing there some kind of thesis on it or some kind of information on it by hand. But now you just type a few things in and the almighty internet comes and takes it over and you have an instant answer. And today you simply ask AI, please do this, please, what is your answer? And you'll get the full comprehensive information, much more probably, and certainly much quicker than going to a library. That's the nature of information today. Information technology, that's the age in which we are in. And we may as well use it to our advantage. Because life is interesting, and all it requires is curiosity. That's all it requires. Leonardo da Vinci was a supreme example of a genius. But his genius lay principally in curiosity. He was curious about the techniques, the brushwork techniques and color combinations of painting. He was interested in biological structures. He was interested in engineering structures. There was no end to his interest in all the different fields. Let's take one example. We all have a body. I think that's quite clear. And if somebody says, no, I don't have, then I'd be a little surprised. But how much do you know about this body? We simply dismiss it in all cases, most cases, and we go to a doctor because the doctor knows the physiology. The doctor knows the anatomy. The doctor knows the chemical answer to a symptom, not the cause, I have to emphasize, but certainly the symptoms. And they have training to understand what drug goes with what symptom and so on, or what specialist should be referred to. And we simply say yes, yes, yes. Nobody questions it. But do you really know your own household? Do you really know your own body, your own physiology? Do you know it as much as you should? Do you know it as much as even a doctor, a medical doctor knows? Are you curious about it? You're living with it. You're walking around with it. You're carrying it. How much do you know about it? How much do you know about the mind? Even the most modern psychology, most modern psychiatry they don't really know what is this thing called mind. They may know the chemistry of the brain, but how the brain exactly works still hasn't been fully worked out. When we talk about consciousness, there's an effort to explore the waves in the brain to see all the various reactions, the areas of warmth and temperature variations in the brain through MRI scans and so on to see, when something is stimulated within our feelings or something like that, what area of the brain is it that's lighting up? And consciousness is the one thing they cannot find because it is not found in any particular corner of the brain. And so it is more compared, like the yogis have compared it, to a lake. Modern physics, most people don't know much about it, except those who have studied it, and even they don't know much about it because they're reliant on things which have been pushed out, a marketing exercise, if you like, which people accept. Now, we cannot be experts in every single field. There are some fields we have to rely on those whose specialist areas have that in mind. But at least we can know enough to be curious, to satisfy our curiosity. And all it takes today is simply a small search and research on the internet. It's an amazing, amazing era that we are in, where we can simply have all this information at our fingertips. Some of it correct, some of it incorrect, but then we use our own curiosity and our individuality to decipher what is reasonable and what is not. If somebody just says it's like this and just accept it, we can't do it. The curious mind has not been satisfied. So how to stop aging? You make sure that you retain a curious mind. You make sure that you reason things out in a very systematic way. I remember asking some questions, even when I must have been 6 or 7 years of age, about motor cars. How does the motor car work? And I understood at a very young age how it works. And then, okay, that's fine. I can explore that a little bit more as I grow older. Then how do other things work? What is the science behind it? Now, there are many things to do with so-called spirituality, which people say works and they claim this and that. And then, even in the area of health, and then you say, what is the scientific evidence? What is the research done on it? And if there's something that seems to be pseudoscientific, then the scientific community tends to dismiss it straight away. But a thinking mind will not do it. They will still continue to investigate. I think one of the silly questions I asked my own teacher once, this telepathy, how does this work? Is there such a thing? And he explained very simply this concept, only one mind. There's only the cosmic mind. That's all there is. And two people tuning in to the same wavelength, we call this telepathy. And people have a natural affinity for it, such as identical twins and so on. All right, and a hand is raised, and I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but there we are. Let us see. Hopefully
yes, Swami. Because I got a question that I actually wanted to ask you, and now that you are saying this, it actually relates to it.
Yes.
Which was when you have a strong connection with someone that you tune in that same, let's call it radio, where you share the feelings, emotions, everything from each other. That means that if there is a connection, this person is also feeling that connection to the radio with you, right? It's like if you say, for example, oh, Swami, I think we are tuned in the same radio. Like that means that we both are conscious that we are tuned in that radio, right? It's not only one person. For a connection, it has to be two. I mean, two. I don't know how to call it. Two.
Yes. Yes. So you can have multiple people tuning into the same broadcast. As one develops the mental faculty, the yogic faculty, let us call it, then you won't be surprised when you think of somebody and then the telephone rings. That same person is phoning. Or I have countless examples. I'm not surprised by them at all. Nothing really surprises me in life nowadays. So the logic of it and the science of it will be that there is only one broadcast station, shall we call it, that is broadcasting with multiple wavelengths, no doubt. And when we tune into the same wavelengths, not necessarily two, but could be two or more, then somehow we are thinking the same thing, somehow we are talking in the same language, and so on. Now, this is the importance in meditation, that we then uh, set out a trail of thought which is useful, a trail of thought that is full of beauty and goodness, so that that beauty and goodness condenses eventually, and our world becomes a beautiful and useful world. If you want peace, then think peaceful thoughts. If you want strength, think strength thoughts. If you want, this is all laid out, by the way, systematically. Patanjali was laying things out according to subject matter very systematically and scientifically. And so when he comes to a chapter, as it were, a section on powers, siddhis, and he's saying, if you do this, you'll get that. And what is the this? The this is samyam, is called. That is, there has to be concentration, meditation, and samadhi. That is highly concentrated, so obliterating all other ideas, in other words. Now, he's saying it's not necessarily useful. He's just putting it out as a subject matter, by the way. So if I want to be strong, if I want strength, well, then think of an elephant and the strength associated with that and so on. You do that. I once came across a book many, many years ago. It has some very useful understandings of this. If you want all the qualities that you admire in various personalities, historical personalities, do an exercise. You sit there and you imagine you're in a room and there's a knock on the door, like an office door or something, or a lounge, and in walks a person that embodies, let us say, leadership skills. And he sits down, you have a conversation. Or there's a compassionate Jesus. I imagine the Lord coming in, sitting in an empty chair, and then you enjoy his company and you ask questions, you have a dialogue. All the things that you meditate on, those qualities come to you. There's a rule like that. So make sure that you meditate on all the good things. Make sure you don't meditate on planes flying and disaster effect and the possibility that people are doing something underhand, ruining the environment and so on and so forth, because you're contributing toward the problem when you're doing that. That's the difficulty. Unwittingly, honestly, with a sense of seeming moral duty, etc., you are actually creating the problem. Interesting, isn't it? We have to ruminate on these things, and we have to do it from a carefully weighed up point of view. See, I had a conversation with somebody this morning, and they were highly concerned about a certain terrorist action that took place, and how people were killed and wounded and so on, and how it's created an international incident and so on. And they were entirely upset and felt that their whole spiritual life had been shaken. And you see, what cannot be cured will have to be endured, is the saying. We have to think. So supposing I create an anxious atmosphere for myself, Supposing I tie all my thoughts and feelings and emotions up into a whole jungle of anxiety, who is the beneficiary of this? Clearly, the person who's doing it is not the beneficiary of this. Not at all. They're doing it to themselves. And furthermore, they are adding to the negativity around them. So let us make sure that we are a beaming light, not just a positivity, but a fullness. And fullness is not something to be gained, it's already with you. You don't go, the goal is not, of course, the goal is freedom, the goal is liberation. Manifesting the divinity is how Swami Vivekananda puts it. But we should acknowledge it and leave it there. Because if we are thinking that it is something like a step up a ladder, or something like it is, I'm here and I need to be there, then that equally is creating negativity and anxiety, because spiritual life is not like that. It's not all of a sudden there is an achievement and an award at the end of it called heaven. No, the kingdom of heaven is in you. It's right where we stand. We have our freedom already. We just don't know it, and we appear to be enslaved. We appear to be an imprisoned splendor, but actually we are splendor, and the imprisonment concept is entirely ours. I think there was a film I once saw. A man came, it's a cowboy movie, a man comes to a town, and it's a very lawless town in the Wild West, and he's handles everything. And he handles a ruffian, part of a gang, and puts him in prison or the jail. And the problem is the town hasn't got enough money to put bars on the jail. And so he draws a line and says, "No, you can't cross this." And the man says, "Well, of course I can cross it." But every time he tries, you see, he's noticed and he gets hauled back. You did this, go back. Till eventually he feels as if he had bars on his wall, you know. We have examples like that, elephants that are trained, let us say Asian elephants that are trained. A chain is put around their foot, and where ultimately the chain is removed, the elephant feels it cannot go beyond the boundary that the chain imposed. So we are creatures of habit, and we have to ensure that this healthy habit that we're cultivating, and that requires us to acknowledge that change has to be there. Every spiritual prophet, teacher, whatever it is, will say, spiritual life begins with your own self-assessment. And in Christianity, early Christianity, they were calling it repentance, repent. Assess your inadequacies and so on, the things which are stopping you from accessing your kingdom of heaven within or your freedom, and then see if, having acknowledged that, if you can then steer your whole energy in such a way that you have access to divine grace that flows through you. Why not? And that can only happen when the ego aspect, the egoism, is no longer used as an inward thing, self-centered thing, egocentric thing, but opens up as a glorious, something like a lighthouse beaming everywhere. Be a beaming person, not a selfish person. Well, we'll finish off there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.